And you will only achieve full salam and full peace for people when you're talking about, when you're speaking up, when you're speaking to truth, when you're speaking for justice and all of that. So justice is also, one of the
Yes.
necessary pillars of
Yeah.
peace.
We see that the fire is not just the reference to the punishment, it is also a blazing fire, a sign of life, a sign of existence, a sign of how humans have been surviving through fire.
Which means scorching heat. So it implies that it burns away sins. So Ramadan is that season, is that month where Allah increases our access to light.
Knowing that peace also means complete submission, which means humility, right? Things will not always go our way, but we need to have that humility, that surrender within us. And it's only when we have that humility within us that we can speak to others and interact with others that's in a peaceful way. So you mentioned beauty, which I think is often forgotten when we talk about nur and light in this regard, right?
So Shaitan doesn't have the power to force us to do things. He just looks for those openings. And where do those openings come from? From an untrained nafs. So Ramadan is that opportunity to return to, like, Allah is not asking us to be flawless. Like, He doesn't expect us to be flawless. It is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's as-salam, who is the flawless, who is perfect. He's just expecting us to come prepared to try, prepared to practice restraint.
Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Raw Pots, Creative Thought and Expression, hosted by Ravani. This episode is a Ramadan special where we're having a conversation on the words and Allah's attributes and what they mean for us in terms of focusing on Nur, which is light and illumination, and Salam, which is peace and balance and proportion. We have with us today Laiba Khan and Saira Farouk, and and myself, Muniba Mahmood, the host and moderator of the conversation, and we'll be talking about, the linguistic lens of these words, the linguistic roots of these words, what they mean for us in our understanding of Allah, in our understanding of the Creator, and what it means for us as, Muslims and followers of the faith, and how this can be applied to Ramadan and to our lives. Ravani's theme for the year, although all of our events and focus will not be entirely spiritual, but the theme for the year and the lens with which we're, approaching the year is Salam, right? So that's the underlying message, and that's the underlying approach and the lens through which we're approaching 2026 and all of our events and initiatives and activities. And Salam, of course, means peace, it means unity. A lot of the work that we're doing is with the global majority. It is, for unity, it is bringing out, giving a platform to voices that are not always heard, and of course, voices that need to be heard, voices that are speaking for peace and uniting people and speaking to truth. So, Salam is the lens with which we're approaching this year through a variety of events, some focused on refugees, some focused on the global majority and celebration of art, some lighter, some more spiritual. At the same time, our focus for February and March is Noor. And this applies to both our Ramadan events as well as our events and initiatives that are focused on Women's Day. Because Noor is clarity, Noor is illumination, Noor is light, and that is how we're approaching spirituality, our lives. And with clarity, we can speak for the rights of those who need to be spoken for. So, with this approach and with this lens established, we move towards the conversation. Just in terms of how we're going to approach this, the first part of the conversation will focus on Noor, which is our theme for February and March. And we'll be talking, to Laiba, who I'll hand over to right now. And Laiba will speak to the linguistic roots of the word Noor, and then we'll have a conversation around it. So over to you, Laiba.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, I'm Laiba Karim Khan and I am a creative and administrative manager here at Rawani, while also being a master's scholar in applied linguistics. So today, since Ravani is holding the theme of Noor, and we are grounding our 2026 creative journey in Salām, I wanted to share something small but meaningful, which is the linguistic roots of Noor and then Salām. So, because as an applied linguist, I believe, and as a body of scholarly research and study, we believe that language just doesn't only carry meaning, it carries histories, it carries beliefs, it carries cultures, and it sometimes even carries identity and political insinuations of that. So the first the first topic which I'm going to touch upon is the linguistic roots of Noor. So because Arabic is a language which has ancestors in the Aramaic and the Phoenician scripts. So it has been it is a descendant of Aramaic and other Semitic languages, Proto-Semitic, what we call. So when we look at the history, you see this word, this root word, nun, wow, ra. It comes from the historical Aramaic, historical Phoenician languages. So in that sense, there has been data from that time that the word nur has been used to refer to brightness, to bringing something to light, to making something visible, clarifying what is hidden. And then we move towards the later translations of during King Edward time, and we see that the word nur in biblical traditions has been translated to fire, to blazing fire, in the sense of punishment. But when we look towards the older tradition compared to the later traditions, we see that the fire is not just the reference to the punishment. It is also a blazing fire, a sign of life, a sign of existence, a sign of how humans have been surviving through fire. So if we and another in another sense, it also has been referred to moonlight, or a light that doesn't burn. So we see it being referred to fire, we see it referred to being punishment, fire as a punishment, and then fire as survival, as warmth. And we also see it as a fire, as a light that doesn't burn. So there's like a lot of traditions associated with the word nur. And across Semitic languages, this root appears with similar meanings. And then we talk about the Quranic traditions. So we see that in Quran we sort of see this nur as divine guidance. So when we first talk about the historical Semitic roots, we talked about that it was referring to clarifying something. And in Quranic tradition and Islamic traditions, we see it referring to a light that is clarifying something through divine guidance. So the guidance is divine and it is illuminating the truth for us. So, and then it is also, which Maniba will touch upon later, it is also one of Allah's names, An-Nur, which is the light or the illuminator. So this is the verse I wanted to share with all of us, is that this is Surah An-Nur, and this is the verse 35. And there is this mention of light upon light, which is a very fascinating concept, and a lot of scholars have, you know, critically thought about it and have discussed about this, what it actually means. What is the light which is shining upon the light? So the first light is divine guidance. It is the Allah's light. It is the Allah's guidance. And the second light is actually what exists within us. So this is the light that Allah has given us within our conscience. Some part of our brain has this light. And when we are guided by Allah's light, we see the truth. We see the reality for what it is. So this is the concept of light upon light, which is not just like it has a depth, it has a lot of meaning. There is a lot profound sense in this. So, and beyond Arabic and beyond Islamic traditions, we all know that Arabic and along with Persian traveled to Indus River and it traveled to what the region we call South Asia and Southeast Asia. So this word doesn't just exist in Arabic and Persian traditions. It exists in Urdu, as we know now. It exists in Punjabi, Hindi, Marathi, Bengali, and it even exists in Turkish. So every language has adopted its meaning to some degrees, and they have changed its meaning to some adapt it to some context. But we see the sense of light within it, and in some tradition, it has been translated to radiance. It has been translated to beauty. It has been translated to feminine beauty, even if we see in the Punjabi sense. So Noor has a lot of meaning. It has layered meaning within the spiritual sense even. So it is physical brightness, it is inner illumination, it is spiritual guidance. So it's not just a light that shines outwards, it is a light that illuminates the inward, the conscience of ours, the mindset of ours. So this is the little introduction about the linguistic roots of Noor, and I'll now hand over to Muniba to take this forward.
That was beautifully explained, Laiba. I think understanding, the vastness of a word, of its roots and its applicability is really key and critical to understanding, to thinking about the concept, right? Because once we think of the different meanings and how they would manifest, it really makes us look at it differently. So you mentioned beauty, which I think is often forgotten when we talk about nur and light in this regard, right? So Allah, has created things beautifully. He's created things in a graceful way. And that's what he loves from people as well, to beautify things, to talk about things in a good way, right? And then at the same time, you've spoken about guidance. You've spoken about fire, which I thought was very, very interesting, because that tells us about life and, creativity and continuity, I think is a very important part of it. I'm going to speak a little bit to Allah's attributes when we understand, sorry. When we understand that Allah is Al Nur, Al Nur, for those who are less familiar with the Islamic faith, is one of the names and attributes that Allah has revealed to Muslims about Himself, right? So He's revealed 99 names and attributes of Himself to us in Islam, and Al Nur is one of them, and it means the light, right? So it means the visible one by whom all is made visible, right? So I just to cite what I'm quoting from, I have been reading Al-Ghazali's notes on the meaning of the name Nur, and what it means for us in terms of understanding who Allah is, and what it means for us in terms of understanding how that knowledge is meant to guide us. So Nur speaks to visibility and existence, because when you talk about when you see something illuminated, when you see light, you understand that there is an existence. The light itself is an existence, and the light is making the existence of another manifest, right? And on the contrast, and I think it's important to understand the contrast, and we'll talk a little bit about it going forward, is that darkness in this sense would symbolize non-existence, right? Now, let's understand the source of light and the attributes of light. So, light is something that's free from the darkness of non existence. Just because, you see something illuminated, you understand that it exists, right? So, it's freed from non existence. Now, it's freed from the possibility of non existence as well. So, the actual and the possibility are both gone. And it draws from the darkness of non existence to the manifestation of existence. Now, let's understand this in terms of, understanding, let's take the metaphor of the sun, for example, right? So the sun is what is making, the sun is a source of light, right? For us, the sun is making things visible and is lighting up the sky, it's lighting up the earth, it's making us see things. So the sun is actually shaping up our perception and guiding us as to, how to see things and how to navigate our way, right? The fact that the sun is the source of light means that the sun is light itself, right? And it tells us that the sun exists, right? So, just like anything that's illuminated by the sun, it's bearing witness to the fact that the sun exists, right? So, everything in light that is illuminated, all of creation is part of Allah's light. And when we look at the creation, we understand that there is a source of this, right? There is a source of this light, and that is coming from, the single source, which is a creator. Just like that, every single atom of creation leads us back to the concept and fact of the creator, right? So when we understand light and when we acknowledge light, we understand who the creator is. He is light and he has created light. And we understand that there is a creator, right? Then speaking to the verse, he is the light of the heavens and the earth. We understand that his existence is the light that streams to all of us, right? And his essence is light, right? His essence is light, which tells us that it's beauty, its continuity, its creation, its guidance. Now, I'll deviate a little bit to speak a little bit more about two more of Allah's names that, help us understand His name and attributes related to Al-Nur. And those are Al-Zahir and Al-Batin, right? So Allah is hidden. Allah is manifest, Al-Zahir, and Allah is hidden, Al-Batin, right? Now, understanding the concept of visibility and invisibility will help us understand the concept of light. Because light is what is, making the existence of things known to our perception, right? So that is Zahir. And then darkness, when there is an absence of light at a sensory level, then you see things that are hidden. Then you can't, then things are hidden from you. But to see what is hidden in darkness, you have to go beyond your sensory perception and go to your intellect, and you have to go to, your higher knowledge, beyond your sensory perception and imagination. You infer the existence of God through your wisdom, right? So just to take a very human-led example for this, when you read the work of a writer, you don't necessarily know the writer, but you can infer who the writer is, what kind of person he is from the traits, right? So if that book has a lot of knowledge and wisdom in it, you immediately think that this author, this writer, has a lot of knowledge and wisdom, right? So the creation of the heavens and the earth and the proportion in which they have been created, the way the affairs of the heavens and the earth are run, tell you that there is a creator with great wisdom, with great light and great proportion, and a sense of proportion and balance and fairness in how he's running things. And then you also understand that because a book exists, there is a writer of that book. So the writer exists, right? So whilst we don't see Allah, he is, he's hidden from our sensory perception. We have evidence of his creation in this life, in ourselves, right? And even us as human beings, we have the internal workings of our bodies and organs. You have your whole nervous system, you have your circulatory system, and so on. And the fact that they are working, even when we're not consciously aware of it, tells you that there is a creator. There is, there is a planning and thought behind how we're functioning. And so things bear witness to God's existence in different ways, right? Whether or not we do so by choice. That bearing witness is, it could be done in a manifest way where we actually acknowledge through our words and through our will that Allah exists. But even then, even when we don't, the fact that we're functioning, the fact that we're alive, the fact that the sun and moon and earth are, rotating and, the earth is rotating around the sun, the moon's rotating around the earth, everything is in motion, everything moves in proportion and, to their appointed schedules. All of that gives us evidence of Allah's creation. And then our sight. So when we're looking at evidence, when we're looking at things that are evidence is always most obvious when it's something that's perceived by the senses, right? And most evident amongst the senses is the sense of sight, right? Because it helps you see and navigate. And that is made evident to us on this earth by the light of the sun, right? So the sun is what is making things manifest. And what the source of, anything that's becoming manifest is manifest in itself, right? So the sun is providing light to the earth. We're seeing things through light. Things can, reflect that light, the light that is drawn from the source. But the original source of the light on this earth is the sun, and, in the universe is the creator. So on this note, I will hand over to Saira to speak to what this means to us as Muslims when we're approaching Ramadan and understanding it.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, Muniba and Laiba, for your beautiful reflections. So, talking of linguistics, I did a quick search on the meaning of Ramadan. So, the word Ramadan comes from the root words Ramada, which means scorching heat. So, it implies that it burns away sins. So Ramadan is that season, is that month where Allah increases our access to light. Every night He chooses people who He pulls away from the hellfire. Laiba spoke about the light within us, which actually is our fitra. That's the light that connects with the divine guidance. And our fitra, our nafs, it's basically a reflection of our hearts. So our hearts are like the glass of a window, which gathers dust. And over time, if we do not clean our hearts, it's that light, like it's difficult for the light to enter. So it's difficult for the nur to enter. So if we do not remove what blocks that light from entering, will continue to remain in a shadow. So many of us approach Ramadan with plans of doing many good deeds, but we ignore sinful behaviors. And the most dangerous of them are lifestyle sins, the ones that we have normalized, which have become a part of our life. And these sins are like holes in a bucket. They're also like curtains blocking light. So yes, we're reflecting on Allah's name An-Nur, but it's also important to reflect on His names, Al-Ghaffar, Al-Ghafur, Al-Afu. These are names which show that Allah is most forgiving. He's Al-Afu. He erases sins. He's Al-Tawwab. He welcomes us when we return. So when we begin Ramadan, it's important. So in this month of light, it's important that we begin with the habit of doing istighfar, of repenting, and that's how we'd feel less burdened, and we'll enter lighter and clearer. And Ramadan is also the month of Quran. So when Ramadan is mentioned, the word Ramadan, when it's mentioned in the Quran, it's also mentioned with Quran. So it's the month of the Quran, and Quran is guidance. Quran is light. So Ramadan is an invitation to reconnect with the Quran, and that is not just through recitation. It's through understanding the Quran. It's through reflecting on Allah's words. It's through living by those words. So to truly reflect on the Quran, we have to start with a sincere intention to come close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and set those, if we're not already in that habit of connecting with the Quran, let's begin this Ramadan with some clear, realistic goals based on, of course, our life circumstances, our seasons of life, our state of iman. If I'm a mom to a newborn, I'll have a different routine. If I'm taking care of my elderly parents, someone else will have a different routine. So based on your life circumstances, and based on where like this Ramadan could be someone's first Ramadan. So based on where you are, just set this non-negotiable of sitting with the Quran every day. and reciting it with tadabbur, with reflection, pausing, thinking, allowing Allah's words to penetrate beyond the tongue and to reach our hearts. And there's no limit that Allah set for us as far as reading the Quran is concerned. He mentions in Surah Muzammil that we can recite Quran however we can. Like this, He hasn't prescribed us to recite a juz or a surah. Even an ayah with reflection is what matters. So light is not measured by the number of pages that I've read in a day. It's about how much of that Quran penetrates in us. And speaking of penetration of the Quran and of this light cannot enter in clutter. So we live in these times of scattered minds. There's constant distraction, doom scrolling, constant notifications, there's endless comparison. So we cannot seek nur, we cannot seek clarity, we cannot seek light while we're constantly feeding our eyes with confusion, with distraction. So Ramadan is that opportunity to reset our focus, to ask ourselves that where is it that I'm most distracted? And is it really worth it? And are there some apps that I should delete? Are there some pages that I should unfollow? Or should I limit those to certain times of the day? So basically, Al-Nur, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not expect us to be illuminated from the onset. He's just inviting us towards illumination. So it's on us to start with those sincere intentions from today, from right now, and to plan Ramadan accordingly.
Brilliant. Thank you, Saira. Very practical guidance based on, that follows very well with what we've just spoken about, what Ramadan is. And I think it's beautiful when you mentioned it as heat and the purpose and function of that heat, right? So to burn away our sins, and then heat is also implying light, and then that light is the guidance through which we're walking and approaching this. And I think it's beautiful that you also touched upon the practical elements of it, because I think nowadays there are two kinds of pressures that we face in life. There's the pressures of modern life that you talked about, the apps that we're looking at, what we need to delete. And I think that's also a good metaphor for the apps that distract us in life, because there's a lot more notifications than just the digital ones. But I also think that the other element of it is we're also often very distracted and misguided and even put off and scared off by spiritual shaming and spiritual pressures, whereas, religion offers a lot of different ways of reconnecting. It's very, obviously, the fundamentals remain, but religion is very balanced and it's very proportionate. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about proportion and balance and peace when we speak to Salam. But just speaking to that final bit that you spoke about, contemplating, right? Reflecting, really thinking about, it's not just about what you're reading in the Quran, it's how you're acting upon it. And that contemplation is what is leading you towards there. So there's a hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says that contemplating Allah's creation for an hour is better than spending a night in worship, right? So in any actions that we do, mindfulness, clarity, guidance, but also reflection, wisdom, practicality, all of those have to play a role for us to really understand things.
Can I
think
just
yeah.
add a point to that, Viniva, that there are people who often struggle when they pick up the Quran for the first time. They struggle with reflection. They say that their reflections are just so superficial. They're not able to go deep. I'd just suggest that, as our teachers say, it's just once again, that's Shaitan's tactic. Would always tell you that, there's this he keeps you in that delusion of this perfect tadabbur. Even with Quran, it'd be like there's this perfect state and this perfect tadabbur that you have to do. No, there's nothing like perfect. So everything that any reflection that's from Allah, that's Allah's invitation to you through the Quran. So there's nothing perfect around that. So even if it's it seems daunting, but yes, it's just another muscle. The more you practice, the more you get into the habit of doing it.
And I think one thing that I really, resonated with when Sarah said, okay, you would feel the light when you intend to, to direct yourself towards it. So you would be guided if your intentions are towards guidance. So that light upon light is significant, because if you are not ready to be guided, then you won't be, you won't see the light, that see the truth, see the clarity. And that's very, very beautiful.
Brilliant. Yes, you're right. So it is that readiness, it's that will and that action needs to come from us. Very well said. So just summing up what we've spoken about what light is as a concept, what the concept of Noor is. We've spoken about Allah as light and, the beautiful ayat that, Laiba had been sharing as well, that Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. And light is also, when it comes down to us humans, it's the light of revelation, right? Given to us through the clear Quran, through the Quran that has been made clear, and the guidance is itself referred to as light. And then we have moral clarity through that light, right? So that we have received that guidance, but it's up to us to actually process it. As to what Laiba just spoke about, it comes down to our will, right? So we need to process it. We need to make it functional through our movement and judgment, right? By functional, I mean we need to then start to practice what we have learned from it. And then one final point that I'll say over here before we move on to the concept of Salam is that it's said that on the day of judgment, light will be placed in front of the believers and they'll be, following the light, right? So light is guidance towards the reward, but light is also the reward. So now we're going to talk about the concept of salam, which means peace. But Laiba will talk a lot more about the linguistic roots of the word salam. Salam is also a name of Allah. Salam is also an attribute of Ramadan, particularly in Ramadan, the most powerful night of worship, the night of Al Qadr, is referred to as being peace until the rising of dawn. So that night is nothing but peace, and Ramadan is the month of peace. Islam is the religion of peace. What does that peace mean? What do we need to understand from it? And Allah is peace, right? So one of Allah's names and attributes revealed to us is peace, right? So do we really understand that? Let's have a conversation around what the word means. Again, what it means in terms of our understanding of our Creator and what it means for us as humans in general and during Ramadan. So over to you, Laiba.
Okay, so now that we have really gotten the essence of Noor, which is like very beautiful, and especially when going into the month of Ramadan, I feel very empowered. So thank you both, Maniva and Sarah, for this. So now we'll move to the linguistic roots of salam. So when I searched about this, I found out that it is again connected to the Semitic root of sin, lam, mim, which actually refers to the peace. It refers to peace in the sense of safety, wholeness, completeness, and soundness. So, and it comes from the Arabic verb salima, which means he was safe, he was unharmed, or he was free from defects. So, what I then understood, what I then got from this was that when we talk about peace, it's not just a sense of being safe, it also means being out of harm's way, being well. And the one thing that really, really stood out was the concept of completeness and wholeness. It is also, the root is also connected to Islam and Muslim, and later Sarah would touch upon it as connected to in Islamic traditions. We know, and it also has roots in Hebrew too. So shalom is a Hebrew word, and both Arabic and Hebrew have same ancestor. We know that, Aramaic. So it also has roots in different religions and different languages, and to some extent it means safety and peace. Safety and peace. Salam. But when we come to Islamic traditions, and when we say Islam has the sense of the word and Muslim has a sense of the word, we understand that the concept of completeness. So, the concept of completeness is that whenever you are not well, you feel incomplete. And that is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks us to pray, is when we are feeling incomplete, and when we pray we wish to be complete, we wish to feel complete. And as as a Muslim community, we often refer to us as a human body. So whenever one part of our community is hurt, we are not complete, we feel harm, we should feel harm. That is, we're not talking about the reality of the world right now, but we should feel the harm that one community of the Muslims is hurt, or they're not well, they're in the harm's way, and we don't feel whole, we don't feel complete. So, and salam is not just a greeting in the sense that we use the word within our greeting, assalamu alaikum, and in Hebrew tradition it is used as shalom. So, in the Islamic traditions, as I know, it is not just a greeting, it's sort of like a moral posture which signifies that not just safety, but a sense of being into welcoming people and welcoming yourself into the world gently. And you're wishing well-being of the others and of yourself, and you want to feel complete in that sense. So I think it sort of signifies that peace as lived experience. So you want peace in the world, there should be peace in the world, but for everyone. So there shouldn't be the peace of or freedom of indifference or sort of like that. So salam in that sense, just a small word, we can say, it carries so much meaning, it carries layers of meanings. In the Whenever we talk about Islamic traditions, we take the words and their meanings from the Quran. So within Quran we see it being referred to different, you know, utterances. So this is the verse that I found, and it is again referring to being have making peace with the people, even if they are not agreeing to you, if even if they're in conflict with you, you have to enter the world humbly, you have to have humility. So salam, in the sense, it carries all of these very, you know, good attributes that we should have, and it again has is connected to us as Muslims, is connected to Islam. So I think that is like a sort of surface level understanding of linguistic root of it, and I hope to listen to more about this and how it connects on a deeper level to Ramadan. And I think this is fitting and Noor too for this theme of the year, because we see that as Muslim community we don't feel whole, we don't feel complete, because they're brothers and sisters of our community were hurt in certain parts of the world. And I think it's very important that we move towards these basic concepts so we feel the sense of humanity that we are supposed to feel in the world today. And thank you. Uh, I'll, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, that's beautifully explained, Laiba. I think you've explained the concept very well. You've explained the linguistic roots, the different meanings, and how that applies to us. I'll speak a little bit to Allah's attributes as being Al-Salam, the flawless one, the perfect one. Salam also means peace and proportion. So Allah is the source of all peace, and we'll speak a little bit more to this later. But for now, let's understand the concept of flawless and perfect, right? So, Allah's essence. So, we have to understand that the Creator is free from defect. By revealing this name to us, Allah has told us that He makes no mistakes and He is perfect, right? So, He's free from defect. His essence is free from defect, and His attributes are free from defect, right? So, who He is and how He is, there is no defect in that. And then following on from that, because his essence and attributes are perfect, his actions are perfect. There is no evil in Allah's actions, right? All that is fearless in existence is attributed to him and comes from him, right? So anything that is holding peace, right? So to Laiba's point about the absence of fear, anything that has that kind of peace, that kind of surrender in it, and Islam being the religion of salam, of peace, implies that kind of surrender. And surrender means, just having that kind of serenity, that living life with trust, right? Living life with the absence of fear. That is the essence of a Muslim. That is the essence of peace. And we have to understand, because this question comes up quite a lot, and we spoke to it last time, last year when we had our Ramadan conversation as well, that people argue that there is evil in this world, right? But we have to understand that there is evil that could be intended as an end goal, and there is evil that is allowed to exist, right? Because it's contributing to the greater good, right? So, for example, we just spoke about the concept of Nur, and the concept of Zahir and Batin. Uh, because certain things are manifest, you understand what is hidden. Because there is light, you understand. Because there is darkness, you understand and appreciate light. You wouldn't know light if there was no darkness, right? So the existence of the shadow tells you about the existence of light. Just like that, whatever evil is in this world is there, is permitted because of there being greater good in it, right? Now, the counsel for man over here, what do we understand? So, Allah is the source of truth. We understand that Allah's actions are perfect. Allah is perfect in Himself, in His existence, in His attributes. Now, for us, what do we understand from it? We need to aspire towards that peace, right? Because it is a religion of peace, it's a religion of submission. So, servants whose hearts are free from deceit, evil, envy, and whose limbs are blemished by sins and forbidden actions, and whose attributes are not affected by inversions and reversal, right? So, inversions is when reason is imprisoned by passion and anger, right? Our proper state of being is when our reason, our rationality, our better sense prevails, right? So this is the concept of nafs in Islam. Nafs is what is inclining you towards actions that are less than perfect, right? So conquering that nafs, making your actions aligned to greater reason, greater understanding, greater peace, and greater knowledge is what it means to acquire that peace, what it means to live with that peace, right? And to Laiba's point about protection and safety, right? So peace is protection and safety. What does it mean in our actions? We need to make sure that for Islam to exist, for us to be Muslims, unless we're protecting others from our speech and actions, right? We are not really exercising peace, right? So peace, the exercising of peace means that our actions cannot hurt or harm others, right? We cannot claim to be living with peace and to be living with Islam if we are harming others through our behavior. So there is that. Then just understanding a few things about the references to peace in the Quran. Allah is described as Al-Malik al-Qudus al-Salam, which is the sovereign one, the owner of everything, the pure one, and then the source of peace. So He owns everything. He's free from all impurities and defects, and He is the one through which peace is provided to us, through which we can if we want to increase our sense of peace in life, it has to be through understanding that all source of peace is from Allah, right? Peace is also offered to Muslims as a greeting and ethic. So when we meet each other, we are commanded to say salam to each other, salam in words as well as salam in action, because Allah says that the true servants of God are those who walk on the earth with humility, right? They're not proud. And when the ignorant address them, not just when anyone addresses them, when the ignorant people, when people who speak harsh words address them, they respond to even them with words of peace, right? So it's complete submission. Peace also, salam also involves complete submission. And we are commanded to spread peace on this world. We are commanded to, the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam told people that if you want to enter heaven, you will have to learn to love one another, right? And to be able to love one another, you need to be able to spread peace, right? So you need to be able to conduct yourself in a way that is peaceful, that is not hurtful to others, and that is, uh, submissive to His will, that is humble. And you need to be living your life with a certain level of serenity and submission in order to be able to do that. Now that we've spoken about this, what does this mean for us in Ramadan, which is the month of peace and which is the great night of Al Qadr, which is, entirely peace? I'll hand over to Syra to speak to that.
Sure. Thank you, Muniba, and thank you, Lyra, once again on explaining the linguistic roots of As-Salam. So we learned that As-Salam is the one who's free from any deficiency. He's the one who grants safety. He's the one who grants tranquility, peace. But sins, as we discussed earlier, sins disturb peace. Distraction disturbs peace. Unresolved grudges disturb peace. So this is where Ramadan requires some emotional cleansing. So we cannot enter Ramadan with grudges in our hearts. Carrying anger just drains our souls. And forgiveness doesn't mean that you pretend that you were never hurt. It's just choosing freedom from the weight and, giving that luggage to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ taught us that if someone provokes you while you're fasting, you should say, I'm fasting. So that's as-salam in action. When you practice self-restraint, when you choose calm over reaction, when you choose restraint over retaliation. As Muniba spoke about nafs earlier, when the nafs is left in charge, it'll always choose what feels good, what feels easy. It'll always choose comfort or anything that's difficult. So it'll choose sleep over effort. It'll choose silence over truth. It'll choose comfort over growth. But when it is trained, it learns patience and restraint and allow us to submit ourselves to as-salam, to bring that peace not only to our own lives, but to the rest of the humanity as well. As we all know, Allah has restrained shaitan in this month of Ramadan. Why does He do that? So that He weakens him permanently. And how does He weaken him permanently? By allowing us to build this self-restraint in this month when the gates of hell are closed. This is an opportunity to just imprison those sinful habits. So Shaitan doesn't have the power to force us to do things. He just looks for those openings. And where do those openings come from? From an untrained nafs. So Ramadan is that opportunity to return to, like, Allah is not asking us to be flawless. Like, He doesn't expect us to be flawless. It is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's as-salam, who is the flawless, who is perfect. He's just expecting us to come prepared to try, prepared to practice restraint, and prepared to resist, and prepared to return to Him. Having said all this, we must appreciate the season of life we're in, instead of hoping for another one. So if someone's grieving a loss of their parent, they may find peace and salam in prayers instead of, community iftars. If someone has long work hours, they may find salam in just reciting Quran during their commute or doing dhikr while, cooking. So it is easy to look at others and to compare, but Allah doesn't look at quantity. He sees the sincerity. He sees how we've put the effort and if we've done stuff with ihsan. He knows the weights that we carry. So I'd like to remind all of us of the ayah from Surah Al-Baqarah that Allah doesn't burden a soul beyond their scope. So our season of life may call us to slow down, to stay steady, or to step up. And it is a moment for us to reflect and to identify what season of life we're in right now and what unique opportunities exist in terms of worship for us in this season of life, especially in the month of Ramadan. And given the season and the circumstances, how do I manage my energy, my focus, so that I can increase taqwa? I know I'm jumping onto concepts. What is taqwa? Ramadan, fasting, when Allah talks about fasting in the Quran, He mentions taqwa. So the purpose of fasting is to increase taqwa. Taqwa is God consciousness. Taqwa is not perfection. Taqwa is just being conscious of Allah in every state, whether it's worship, whether it's work, whether it's just the mundane chores. It is choosing Allah when no one else sees, according to your capacity, according to your circumstances. So every night in Ramadan, Allah frees people from the hellfire. And the question isn't whether the mercy would descend or not. The mercy will descend. The question is that whether our hearts are illuminated to recognize the mercy and whether we're peaceful enough to receive that mercy from Him. And I would also like to mention something that it's natural to feel this dip post Ramadan. The goal is like Ramadan is like this spiritual gym, so you can't always be at the peak, but you just have to strive to be at a higher level than before. So compare yourself to what you were before Ramadan, and the goal is not to return to zero, but if you like took 100 steps in Ramadan, don't go back to zero. Like you could go back to 30 or 20, but don't go back to zero. That's the goal.
Beautiful, thank you, Saira. So I think it's been summed up quite well, in terms of what is Salam, what is that peace, how many aspects does it have, and how do we understand our Creator from it, and how can we then draw on the peace that exists in this world because of Allah's peace, because of His perfection. How can we draw on that and guide our actions in this life? I do want to talk a little bit about, very, very briefly about what you said about forgiveness and clearing our hearts of grudges. And this is only because it's so often, there are so many elements and layers to that
Of
discussion.
course, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
because I think what people talk about as forgiveness, what's important for people to understand is that it means freedom from negativity, right? So you're not constantly out there to gain revenge, but of course, it doesn't mean tolerating injustice, right? So it's that
Yeah,
balance
yeah.
between the two, and you will only achieve full salam and full peace for people when you're talking about, when you're speaking up, when you're speaking to truth, when you're speaking for justice and all of that. So justice is also, one of the
Yes.
necessary pillars of
Yeah.
peace. Yeah, and then also just as we spoke about how peace can guide us, in its different forms, knowing that Allah is perfect, knowing that His message is perfect, knowing that this is our source of peace and not any other pursuits in this life, knowing that peace also means complete submission, which means humility, right? Things will not always go our way, but we need to have that humility, that surrender within us. And it's only when we have that humility within us that we can speak to others and interact with others that's in a peaceful way, right? And that's when we treat others as being equal to us, so it's that understanding as well. Again, like we spoke about Noor being the goal of faith, right? Noor being the guiding light as well as the goal. Salam is also a way of being, right, as a Muslim. It's complete surrender. Allah said, "Oh, you who believe, enter, Islam completely," right? So it's not a partial way of living. It's not a pick and choose. It's a way of being, right? So I'm not arguing about, so we're not debating you know, we're not debating small actions over here. We're talking about this as being an entire way of living, right? Spiritual as well as external, how you're dealing with others, that whole humility. It's also the goal of faith, right? Dar es Salaam. This is what we aspire towards. We want to go towards God. We want to, after this life, we want that we qualify for the home of peace, right? We want that we are amongst those believers who qualify for that. So yes, so I think
And I think what you said, Maniba, about grudges and what Sarah said about grudges part is that you hold grudges because you feel wronged and you feel that you couldn't say what you believe to be the truth. It's very important to speak the truth when you can, because in certain contexts we cannot say what we want to say what we believe is the right thing. And that is why there are grudges that we hold on to. And I have a lot of grudges. I just realized that. And what Sarah said made me realize that I have to let it go. I have to let it go before Ramadan and enter with that, peace of mind. So yeah, thank you.
No, you're right. Like, as you both said, Islam doesn't allow for oppression. We can't. Allah Ta'ala is Al-Adl. Like, He is justice. He doesn't call himself the just. He calls himself justice. Like, he's Al-Adl. He's not Al-Adil. He's Al-Adl. Like, there's no room for injustice as far as Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is concerned. So, of course, like, we cannot. Um, we cannot if we're supporting Zulm by staying quiet, we're amongst the Zalimin. So it's out of question. But as you mentioned, Laiba, subconsciously those feelings, that negativity does weigh us down. Like where we're just our body, like physically, emotionally, spiritually, it's just there's this deep weight of this grudge, so that we're of course, like we're lending that matter into Allah's court, but then we have to free ourselves. Like Ramadan can't enter in a cup that's already full. There has to be space there. So it's not just about time or hours. That there has to be space in us to welcome Ramadan, to feel it, to feel the Noor, to feel the Salam. There has to be that space so we have to just free ourselves from that weight. That's what I was trying to say as far as scratches are concerned.
No, and I think that's a really important and good point, right? Because so many places in the Quran, Allah talks about how He does not like negative speech and bad words to be said, right? And I do think that there is a danger in both directions, right? So there is a danger in people misquoting religion and using it for spiritual abuse, not letting people speak up for injustice, right? And letting injustice continue. But on the other hand, it's also people who are not watching their words, who are not, uh, you know, addressing their negativity, because you can't achieve peace if you're continuing to hold grudges and negativity in yourself. If you're constantly going after revenge, you won't progress, right? If you're constantly thinking ill of others, you won't look at the evil within yourself, or the faults in yourself, even if you're not an essentially evil person. But yeah, I think it's so important for us to live with that balance, that proportion. That Salam in itself is that balance and proportion. And I think
Yeah, and yeah, yeah. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
yeah, no, I was just going to say that if we look at Salam and Noor as our guiding lens for this point in time and for the year, Noor is how we're seeing light. Noor is illumination of the guidance of our minds, of our spiritual states. It is that guidance that enables us to make the right choices and to move towards the right thing, right? So the right choice is an action. Salam is what makes us whole, a holistic way of living, right? The right proportion and order. So that balance that we just spoke about, safety, right? Being safe for ourselves, but being safe for others as well. And we have to understand that Salam and Noor are attributes of God. Anything that we're deriving of these traits, anything that we're deriving of peace and light and guidance is from God. It's the goal of our life. It's a guidepost, and it's also the ultimate goal. Salam is what is giving us the gentleness to live life with. and Noor is, giving us the strength to take action, the right actions from. Thank you, Saira and Laiba, for joining us today. It's been a very, it's been a, what do you call it? It's been an illuminating discussion, I would say, because I
Yes.
felt that when both of you were talking, it was reflecting, because I've been reflecting at my own and making my notes. But when I heard each of you, talking about these things, it really helped me think about this. And as Sarah said, thought leads to thought, doesn't it? Because when you're talking
Yes.
about one aspect, you think that there are so many more topics. This is so vast. There is so much to be covered. But hopefully, inshallah, we can continue to do that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Stay tuned to us throughout the year.